Welcome to our studio, Crusade for Freedom, located in the heartland of America. Our desire is to be a symbol of hope by spreading the message of freedom to millions. We encourage everyone to visit our website at crusadeforfreedom.com. That's crusade, the number 4, freedom.com. Please be sure to subscribe to our website and like us on Facebook. We are so glad you stopped by today and hope you will keep coming back.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is Life, Liberty, and Levin. Dan Bongino, how are you, my friend?
Good to see you, Mark.
You are my friend.
Yes.
One of my best friends.
Well, you've always been a source of good advice to me, and I'll always appreciate that.
Well, you're a good man and a great patriot. You were with the New York Police Department,
That's right.
Secret Service. You ran for office, came that close to being a member of Congress, and you're relevant.
Yeah.
So here you are now, a patriot.
Thank you.
We see you on Fox a lot. You're fairly ubiquitous, and that's very important because you bring a different experience, background to these events that are taking place involving, at least on the surface, law enforcement and that sort of thing. You've been looking at this Russia issue, this non-Russia issue now for years. You've been analyzing it as a former cop, as a former Secret Service agent. You have a unique perspective in that regard. First of all, from a global point of view, this was the greatest setup and political spectacle, not just in modern history, I think, but in all of American history. Do you agree? Because it included instrumentalities of the federal government in the Obama administration.
There's no question about that. That is not even a remotely hyperbolic statement. And if, in a moment of self-deprecation, but it's necessary to set this up, I got to be honest with you, as a former federal agent, when I first heard about and got inklings of this case from a source of mine, Mark, I gaffed it off. I said, there's no way this happened. I said, having been a GS 1811 federal agent, there were just too many.
And that's very
controls.
high, by the way.
Yeah, there's too many controls built in. There's no way the FBI at the upper level and the intel community would have had the temerity to do this. And it's only when this source of mine started giving me information that later became vindicated where I looked, Mark, and came to the conclusion you just accurately stated. This is unquestionably the biggest scandal, political scandal, in American history. There's not even a close second. Unbelievable what happened.
Does it amaze you, as bad as the media are, and the media in this country, I mean, I wrote a whole book on it, it really is an unfree press. Does it amaze you, though, that when you have Obama officials and other officials at the highest levels of federal law enforcement, the highest levels of our federal diplomatic corps, the State Department, and the highest levels of our intelligence agencies, working to destroy the candidacy of a candidate, then working to destroy the transition period, and still working today to destroy the presidency, and the media largely has thrown in with them? I mean, as an American citizen, you got to sit back and say, what the hell's going on here?
You know, like any American patriot, I support the free press. But as I always say, they're free to be stupid. And unfortunately, they've taken us up on the offer. What's fascinating here, Mark, is there are actual transmission texts, emails, documents out there showing there was intimate involvement of the White House in this scandal. If any entrepreneurial media person would just look at it. We have this text, the White House is running this, talking about the circumstances surrounding the investigation. Right around the time the investigation's happening, we have this other text between the players. The White House wants to know, POTUS, President of the United States in acronym, wants to know everything we're doing. We have John Brennan up on Capitol Hill saying, I gave the briefing about the case to the gang of
former CIA director.
Former CIA director. I gave the briefing, and I'm doing this in conjunction with the White House. I mean, none of this is, you can Google this. You can look on the internet and find this. It's not some special skill Dan Bongino had. And yet nobody, Mark, in the media on the left side seems even remotely curious, again, about the biggest political scandal of our time. It's really unfathomable what's going on. It's so outlandish.
You had spies inserted into the Trump campaign by the FBI. You had lies fed to the FISA court, a federal court. Federal district court judges run the FISA courts by the highest levels of the FBI and the Department of Justice. You had the unmasking of American citizens, including from people at the White House, as well as from the UN and others, on a scale we've never seen in modern times. You've had the leaking, the felonious leaking of information, so-called investigative information, trying to push the ball with the public against candidate Trump and now President Trump. You had leaking by the head of the FBI. He denied it. He's a liar. And you also wrote self-serving memos that belonged to the government. And he leaked some of those. The number two at the FBI, McCabe, a leaker, and then lied about it, and is now potentially facing criminal charges. The general counsel of the FBI forced to resign. The top level of the FBI wiped out.
Yeah.
Your book, you have a brand new book coming out, Exonerated, the failed takedown of President Donald Trump by the swamp. You have to ask yourself, I do, how did they not take this man down, given they used every instrumentality of the federal government and the press and Congress? This one man, this outsider, who would not be taken down, and they did everything they can, and they're still doing everything they can take them down. How do you explain that?
Well, that's why I wrote the follow-up to my first book, Spygate. My first book was written on this case in more of a police file format, so you didn't have to read it like a narrative. You could jump to chapter 6, oh, let's read about this player, and then to chapter 2, wherever you wanted to start. And I found the mistake, I don't want to say mistake, I did that deliberately, but one of the things I left out is I didn't tell the whole story in a narrative format that you just laid out in a minute and a half. I lay it out very simply, like I call this a spy story for idiots.
And by the way, it reads like a spy story.
Oh, well, thank you. I tell the events in a narrative format so you can read from start to finish, and I break it down very simply into here was Obama's plan A, plan B, and plan C. Of course, I make these names up just for simplicity, but you just spoke about them. They tried unmasking. Basically wiretapping in normal parlance. They tried to listen in on the Trump team's phone calls and others. What did they get? Nothing. Zip. Zero. So then when that didn't work, they move on to plan B, using the FISA courts to formalize the spying process through our courts designed to get our terrorists and enemies of the United States. When that didn't work out, then what do? They go to the media, and they tried to use the media to build public support for a special counsel with the assistance of James Comey, and upper level people in the FBI. And what do? They get their wish, and Bob Mueller doubles down. And now we've seen phase 4 of this. I should have added an appendix, plan D. Now we have Jerry Nadler and the ridiculous impeachment, which is just, again, a continuous polluted river where they just will not let it go. But that's what I did in this book. I tried to tell it as a continuous story, and it was based on a viral speech I did about it. Because when you tell it as a police file, sometimes the players get disconnected.
I'll tell you why your book is actually fabulous. It's a fabulous book, and I did learn a lot of new things here, but I didn't just learn new things. There's a blockbuster revelation in here. May I touch on it? And you can see the extent to which you want to expand on it, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you here. And that is, this is a blueprint. What they've done to President Trump is a blueprint that they finally got to execute thanks to the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton. What is this blueprint?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. When the unmaskings, plan A for them, didn't work, in other words, they're spying on the Trump team, waiting for this evidence of collusion, for Trump to be talking to Putin, hey, guy, let's overthrow the U.S. election. Well, nothing happened. Well, instead of the Obama team walking away and saying, sorry, guys, we screwed up, there's no collusion here, they needed to go back and fabricate a collusion story. Well, who better to go to than a guy that already had a collusion story pre-written? I call it the movie script, the plug-and-play plot in the book. Glenn Simpson, who is the proprietors of Fusion GPS.
This is the former Wall Street Journal reporter.
Absolutely. Glenn Simpson, Mark, had already written a piece, remember the date, I'm not getting this wrong, in 2007 in the Wall Street Journal about former Soviets' efforts to influence the United States. I talk about this in the book. You read that 2007 Wall Street Journal piece, which he wrote with his now wife, Mary Jacoby, at the time.
And who is she?
She was a reporter for the Wall Street Journal at the time as well. They're now married, right? You read that 2007 piece, the exact same players appear in the dossier. And the format of it, the telling of the story is very similar, which says to me, they said, we don't have any information on the Trump team. We're making this story up. Well, if we're going to make a story up, let's just plug Trump's name into a story we already have from Glenn Simpson, who was more than happy to take the bait.
Now let's explore this a little bit. 2007, which race was that? John McCain against Obama.
Yeah.
And they wanted to use this script with the Russia collusion against McCain.
Other people at the Washington Post had already tried this. Rick Davis, who was a campaign a bigwig in the McCain campaign, they had already tried this against McCain because Davis was trying to set up some meetings with some Russians. So the Democrats had already tried to attack McCain, ironically, with this same Russian collusion thing. But what was the choke point? Why didn't they take it further? In other words, Mark, why did the Obama administration jump to spying and the FISA courts and unmasking, while in 2007, that McCain race, roughly in that time period, why did it stop with McCain with just some media leaks? McCain and the Russians, Well, because George W. Bush was president, and he wasn't going to allow the intelligence community to be weaponized to spy on John McCain. It's very simple at that point. But yes, that's another revelation in the book. Not just that they pulled this movie script out and inserted Trump's name into it to make him the bad guy, the antagonist, but that they'd already tried this same thing against McCain. Mark, none of this is new. And when you read it and you read the allegations against McCain, if I took McCain's name out, put Trump in there, you'd say, they've already tried this same thing. None of this is new. And ironically, McCain becomes a player in it later on.
Handing a copy of the dossier through his staffer to the FBI.
Yeah, and the staffer makes a huge, enormous judgment error. He says to this day, one of the staffers, well, we gave it to the FBI to verify it. Well, then why'd you leak it to the media? Listen, you want to give information to the FBI, that's there's nothing illegal about that. But if you're claiming you did it because you wanted it verified, then why'd you leak it to the media?
This is a controversial point, but I'm going to ask anyway. Was McCain out to get Trump?
Yeah, I think so. And it pains me to say that, given the man's history, but honesty matters, Mark. And I think he wrote, I believe, in his own book, too, that if asked to do it again, he would have, that he thought he did the right thing. And that's up to him to say that. He's not here to defend himself.
I'm not trying to pick on him. I'm just trying to get the
I
history
totally understand.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm only using his own words, that I just don't think he was a big fan of Trump. But it's ironic, given, as I write in the book, that he was subjected to these...
Did he know he was subjected to this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they had to make moves with Rick Davis, and they had to detach themselves from Oleg Deripaska, this key Russian in the Trump
But the difference
orbit.
here is, as you point out, the Democrats control the apparatus.
Now Obama controls the apparatus. And instead of just leaking stories to the media about McCain being attached to the Russians, they leak story to the media about Trump with the Russians, and then they double down in the court system.
When we come back, I'm going to ask you, how is it possible that Barack Obama wouldn't know most of this or all of this? Folks, don't forget, most weeknights you can watch me on Levin TV. Levin TV. Here's how you sign up, and we'd love to have you. Call 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV, or go to blazetv.com/Mark, blazetv.com/Mark, and sign up there. Here's the Bongino book, Exonerated. Strongly recommend it. Here's the Levin book, Unfreedom of the Press. Strongly recommend it. I can have one book on one end of the shelf and one book on the other end of the shelf. We'll be right back. Dan Bongino, Barack Obama, in my estimation, was a terrible president, but still he was hands-on. He was going on in his White House. He had his surrogate, that's apparatchiks, who reported back to him. He was very interested in his press coverage. Most presidents are. He would get a national intelligence briefing, like most presidents, twice a day. How is it possible that the President of the United States wouldn't know most of what's been taking place when his government, let's be honest, his government, his administration is targeting the Republican candidate for president, the transition of the Republican candidate who won the presidency, and has a meeting in January with his senior folks going over the so-called Russia issue